Good morning, everybody. I'm Naveen, co-founder of Beyond 8. Welcome to this very special edition of Out of the Box. We've had 5 or 6 out of the box sessions before this. We usually host these on Fridays at 11 a.m. But the object of all these events that we conduct are to help young people learn about interesting people, interesting things, understand different industries. And so every opportunity that presents itself, we try and make the most of it because we want young learners to have a range of opportunities to learn from. So we have a number of programs that are already on our website, on our Facebook page, on our YouTube site. So I would encourage young learners beyond grade 8 and anybody else older also to go and take a look at those, to just get to know a little bit about different people that are very interesting, doing amazing work all across the world actually. And there's always something we can learn, pick up from these conversations that we have, and that's the objective. It's not a tutorial. We're not going to be tested on any of these things. It's an opportunity to learn and develop a new interest. So through these events, we hope that lots of young people are able to imagine that education is more than the physics and the math and the chemistry and the English and the science and all the second languages. There's more to learning than just the curriculum. That's the objective here. So I have two very special guests with us today, Ram and Smita. They are both founders of Rang. Ram is an Ashoka Fellow. For those of you that don't know Ashoka Foundation, it was started by Bill Drayton in recognition of social entrepreneurs that did exceptional things for people in society, for communities around them, and for the world at large. Through their work, they have championed, a lot of micro entrepreneurs, if I can call farmers that. They do lending through a platform. The Rang They used to be just that. Now they've pivoted and they're a peer-to-peer lending organization, which also has the NBFC license. I would like to, first of all, welcome Ram and Smita today to Out of the Box on Beyond 8. And, before we get into all the wonderful new things that you're doing, I'd like you to take a little bit of time helping our young learners understand your original idea of Rang They, where it originated, what inspired you to start the organization, and your journey so far.
Sure. So thank you so much, Naveen, for having us on this show. So it all started as an idea while both I and Smita we were in Oxford, and we had plans to come back to India and start something meaningful in the social space. And so we set a deadline for ourselves. The year was 2006. And we didn't worry too much about what that issue would be, because in a country like India, you're spoiled for choice. When 2006 came, we looked at several ideas. And we also quite accidentally discovered microcredit for the first time, because Mohammed Yunus and the Grameen Bank had just won the Nobel Peace Prize. Our initial response was, well, India is far better off. We don't need microcredit in India. But when we looked at it more closely, we noticed that India was actually behind Bangladesh on some of the key parameters. And we also noticed that in India, the interest rates being charged by the microfinance institutions were way too high. They hovered in the range of 40 to 60% APR. And that really made us think about doing something about this problem of providing affordable access to communities who are either denied credit or who are not even offered credit.
Okay. What exactly is peer-to-peer lending? It's we hear the term peer-to-peer in so many contexts, but peer-to-peer lending is something sort of perhaps quite new for a lot of our listeners, being in grade 9 and above. So maybe you could just talk a little bit about what is P2P lending and how is it different from institutional lending?
Sure. So what we really, so way back in 2008 when we set up Rang They, we were the first ones to start peer-to-peer in India. What it really means is that you can actually see a person who needs a loan, and you can go online and lend money to them. The money would go into their account, and then they would repay the money. So that's pretty much what peer-to-peer, in its simplest form, is. But what we have done is how we went about doing this was to work with community organizations on the ground, so that they can help us identify people who actually need this money. And typically, we lend to small business owners, small entrepreneur enterprises, artisans, weavers, and farmers. So that's been the model. From But in 2017, RBI came out with guidelines to regulate P2P lending, and then we had no choice but to comply with it. So we were very fortunate to get the required support from our own community of social investors, and we went ahead and filed for the license. So now, as you said, we are now also regulated by RBI. Now that's very revolutionary in many ways, because if I were to borrow from you, Naveen, and if I were to borrow from you via the Rangde platform, that would now get regulated by RBI. Now that's the power of this model, and therefore there's no institution in between, right? Because I'm taking money from you. If I had taken this money from a bank, where you have put your savings, then it would have been an institutional borrowing, because I'm borrowing from an institution, and therefore what is happening in P2P, it's a lot efficient way of taking money directly.
I think simply
Okay.
it's just person to person lending,
Yeah.
and it can start from as little as 100 rupees. And the reason why it's 100 is anybody can actually make a difference, and that's really what Rangde is all about.
Right. No, I think it makes sense. Often in our own efforts in teaching entrepreneurship to young people, students in our school, and and beyond it, what we have learned is that everybody has the mindset and the heart to enable another person, regardless of their economic standing. We found that people, first generation learners in schools, were thinking, "Who can I enable?" And so that sense of giving is always there. We are a community, if nothing else, right? So I think people generally want to enable one another, but there haven't been enough platforms and ways by which this can be done in a way that we are sure that the money is actually reaching the actual intended end point, and there is some level of reasonable level of guarantee that people can get money back. But I've always been inspired by Professor Yunus. Amazing, Grameen Bank has been the model that changed people's perception about micro lending itself. But I'm always wondering, how he goes in one of his talks. He says that all I did was I did everything other than opposite to what banks did, and that's why it succeeded. And so, while there's a joke in that, why do banks not do this to these micro entrepreneurs, if I can call farmers and artisans to whom you're giving this money to? Why don't they do it? And why is it requiring you? Or it's not either or, is it both? I think young people would want to know that.
Yeah, I think the issue is largely, we need banking reforms for this, because the banks, the way they've been designed, one, they're not enough of them for a country of our size, and also the accessibility. It's a bit of a challenge, because one, that we don't have the high literacy levels across the country as much as we should have. So people also at times struggle to sign, to get access to their own money. But having said that, a few years back, there has been this landmark uh, regulation, which is now translated into a bank, which is in the form of the India Post Payments Bank. So we are seeing the light at the end of the tunnel. We will eventually get there. But yeah, so largely that's been the issue. One, access to banking, and the next step after that is access to credit. Because if you don't have a bank account which you use regularly, then there is no way you would get access to credit. So yeah, so it's kind of we will get there as a country. There are a lot of positive signs to that extent. Yeah, so that's really the challenge.
Okay. But is there other ways by which young people can learn about these? Do they have courses on, just to understand microcredit? I know that there's a course on everything today in Coursera and edX. I don't know if they also exist in the world of microcredit and NBFC lending. Are there places where young people can go to online and learn?
Well, I think,
I,
yeah, sorry, go ahead.
I think the best place to start is talking to people, and a lot that we have learned is from talking to people. So when we have visited, rural communities, we have spoken to them, understood what their challenges are. For me, I think that's where the biggest learnings come from. And you don't even need to go too far. Your, domestic help, the person who works with you, just have a
Right.
conversation with her, because somewhere we all take it for granted that bank accounts, access to credit is a given and everybody has it. But one conversation, be it with your driver, be it with your domestic help, I don't think there can be a better crash course to microcredit than talking to them. Talk to them and you get to know where we are in terms of financial inclusion as a country. For me, that's the biggest thing. And of course, there are lots of resources out there. Just Google it and you'll find a lot of articles about it. But nothing like a first-hand experience of having a heart-to-heart talk with somebody. You'll get to know what this is all about.
Yeah, and if you really want to understand this sector a little bit more, and if you're more academically inclined, there is this Nachiket More committee which was set up by RBI a few years ago on financial inclusion. Now, that's a very good, source of information which documents all the challenges which India has faced and all the recommendations which the committee had to bring about financial inclusion.
Okay. I think you've answered in more than one way. I think there is something we can do without having to look to institutional education around these ideas by just talking to the people around us. If you know farmers, talk to farmers. If you have maids or drivers, talk to them. I think
Yeah.
it makes a lot of sense. Just understanding the challenges these people face. And no better time to do this than now, right? When so many of their jobs are lost or just in a state of limbo. I've been reading a lot on how food produce is just being dumped down the drain, milk and eggs and vegetables. All people are crisscrossing across perfectly good harvestable vegetables and plowing them back into the soil. We're hearing just horror stories around these things, and I think uh, certainly, the message that I hear loud and clear from the two of you is that start talking to the people around you. Don't look to an institutional approach directly. While there are plenty of those available, I think just being aware of our surroundings, the people around us, and how these kind of pandemics affect them itself is a good
Yeah.
starting point. So thank you for that response. The other question I had thought of wanting to ask you was about internships. Do other ways young people can maybe perhaps intern with Rangde or similar other organizations? As long as they meet some kind of age criteria, without any breaking any rules as such. Is there ways to just participate in it in an institutional capacity? Only because they'll get a larger perspective than what they may get by just talking to people around them.
Yeah, our youngest intern was 12 years old when she interned
Okay.
with me. And now she's at
Wonderful.
college, you know.
Uh,
So I think we'd love to have interns, and I've also realized that with time, young people are a lot wiser than many of us, and what they've been
how
able to.
true.
Oh, absolutely. What some of our interns have been able to contribute, even, seasoned team members, professionals have not been able to think like that. And just like your program is called Out of the Box, we have seen that sort of an out of the box thinking from young people. And we have done several things, started new projects, thought of how could we take Rangde to schools. A lot of this has actually been initiated by our young interns. So lots of
Okay.
opportunities in communication, in research, finding out new ways of, reaching out to young people, because the future actually lies in young people, and we would like to see how we can
So
take our
true.
concepts, our learnings back to them. So lots of internship opportunities, and all people need to do is write to us, and we'll be happy to understand,
Wonderful.
what areas of interest people have and map them accordingly. And we have had loads of many interns, very young
So
people who
good. I'm certainly going to make the most out of it and get our Beyond It learners who are interested, to be a part of that ecosystem. Thank you, Smita. We have an audience question. Although I didn't say, I'm glad to see the audience participating. Please, those of you watching this live stream on Facebook, please do ask questions. I will request both Smita and Ram to respond. Smita, there's a question from an audience actually. Nandini asks, is funding done for agricultural studies as well?
Not really. So right now the focus has been on access to credit for livelihood activities, and we have done education loans before, but it's a very specific need to fund education needs of low income households. We have also done a little bit of vocational training. So focus is mostly on livelihood, and of course agriculture is a big part there. Yeah, but not agriculture studies per se.
Okay. So the reason I'm also curious about the response to this question is because, I've been thinking that so much of academic work conducted in colleges today seems disconnected from the real world, because everybody in industry is saying all that young people are learning seems irrelevant to what we do. They don't seem to have skills at all. In fields like engineering, people are talking about less than 12, 13% employability, which means fundamentally we've spent 4 years doing useless things in institutional education. So I was curious also for that reason. We have another question, Smita. Kaushik says, yet so simple but a very powerful idea. Hope technology as a tool helps to make communication further efficient in this sector. I agree with you, Kaushik, that technology is going to enable so many ecosystems in a period like COVID. Even the people who rejected technology entirely will have to embrace it at some level. Maybe you could also talk about how technology is enabling your ecosystems, Ram, and that would help our listeners understand that also.
Sure. So for example, we have built a very lean application which is entirely paperless and cashless. Earlier it was a tablet, and thanks to this pandemic, we now built a mobile phone app. Now, just imagine a very remote tribal community of farmers in the Aruku Valley in Visakhapatnam district can be onboarded by a field staff of our partner in a matter of minutes.
I see.
So that's exactly the power of the technology. And as an organization, we've made sure there is no paper in the entire information flow. And also the money is digitally transferred into their bank account. There are challenges, but we are working with the communities to make sure that and facilitating the access to their accounts. So I think at both the fronts, it's really we're trying to push as much as we can.
Yeah, and also I would think besides just helping them directly, it's also bringing that money into the known economy. It's also saving people from diseases they could catch or spread by passing money from hand to hand. So I think it's got many different benefits. There's another question asked, which is, can you please elaborate a little bit more on vocational training? It's asked by Rajeshwari.
So we provide credit for vocational training. Again, we've not had much success with it because largely vocational training is also linked to the ability of the participant to get a job. And we've seen, at times, at least in the limited programs we have done, there have been challenges. So we don't do vocational, we don't fund vocational training actively at the moment. But we'll be open to new ideas if there are any.
But what has been successful is undergraduate courses like optometry, which are job-oriented courses. So those are areas where we have seen some success, even though we have done limited loans there. For example, there was a student who was doing our BSc in optometry, and suddenly something happened in her life, and there was a personal emergency, and there was a chance that she may not be able to continue her education. So somebody connected us to her, and we pitched in with an education loan. And we were so happy that many years, and we had even forgotten about it, because we just said, let's just address this need. We were so surprised when many years later she had gone on to set up her own business. She had set up her own what do you call them, the spectacle centers,
Yeah,
set
yeah.
up her own, and she got back thanking us, for the support, and asking us, if she could repay the loan now, so that it could actually help, somebody else.
Oh,
So these
how
are
wonderful.
small stories of hope, but we have not, like Ram said, we have not done as much as we can actually do in this space.
I think that brings me to that something that I hold very dearly: empathy. Right, just being able to recognize this person was able to do it also because she had that. Not only just the empathy of the person who may need that same sort of support, but also cognitive empathy to be able to take their perspective also and think like them rather than think like ourselves.
Yeah.
So, maybe you could tell a little bit about how you moved from being just a social grant platform to what you're currently doing, and a little bit about your upcoming event and partnership with NDTV that you're rolling out. I think on the 24th, is it?
Yeah. So so we were always a P2P platform. So even though we took earlier, all kinds of capital, CSR capital, all of that, because it was not regulated, but we've always done loans on runway. We have never done donations or crowdfunding in that sense.
Right.
So what is, I think the big difference has been that from a unregulated entity, we have now become a regulated entity, and I think that's a huge
Okay.
step forward.
Okay.
Absolutely. And in terms of this campaign itself,
Yeah.
when the whole pandemic and lockdown happened, we realized that small and marginal farmers needed a lot of support. So this campaign is really dedicated to them. And we realized, because of the huge need that exists out there, we need to really step up our efforts to create awareness about the
Absolutely.
and also create.
Absolutely. I cannot agree more with what you're saying. Maybe this is a good time to sort of, share with our viewers and learners about the campaign itself. We can play that video now for the viewers.
If you ate today, thank a farmer. When you remember that amazing meal, thank a farmer. As we go through one of the worst crises India has ever seen, it's time to help the men and women who work day and night to feed our country. Run De India, a special telethon.
It's not a charity, it's a social investment. Coming soon, only on NDTV.
How wonderful! This is very useful, Ram Smita. The one last question we have time for. There's a viewer that has asked this question. So, what is the percentage of people who don't pay their dues when you do these micro credits to the micro entrepreneurs? I think it's an important question because people, while everybody has the heart to give, not everybody may be able to give it and not have it come back to them so that they can enable either themselves or someone else. So I'd like you to take a shot at that.
Yeah, so if you look at our historical data from 2008 to 2017, we had 96% repayment rate. What is amazing about this data is that we've not had even one willful default by any of our community members. The percentage where we did not get the repayments were largely because of external events, such as the microfinance crisis in 2010. We were affected by that. Then we had the demonetization, and then we had the natural calamities in geographies where our communities live. So, barring those instances, we've not had any willful defaults by the community members themselves.
I see. And you don't have, is there a limit on how much you give as credit, or it really depends on what they're asking, or the industry in which they function? How do you determine what is the limit?
Yeah, so I think it's a great question. So what we really do is, we work with our partners, and there are obviously regulatory guidelines. As for the regulatory guidelines, the maximum limit a person can borrow is 10 lakhs. The maximum a person can lend is 50 lakhs. The maximum a person can lend to one borrower is 50,000 rupees. Those are regulatory limits. But what we do at Rang is we work very closely with our partners, and we co-create the product based on the unique requirements of the borrower. In other words, what we give them is the ability to choose. We give them the choice architecture to choose how much they want to borrow, when they want to borrow, and for how long they want to borrow. So it's just, and I think the combination of low cost credit in addition to the ability to choose, it becomes a force multiplier for the borrower.
Okay. I think I should let you both go. Thank you so much for giving so much opportunity to learn for our young listeners. Are there any closing thoughts you'd like, to tell to our young learners at Beyond 8, or even the general audience that's participating in this?
Yeah, I would love for them to participate in this campaign. We are very excited about
Absolutely,
it for the first time. The URL is rangde.in/India. They can learn more also about the campaign on this page, and they can also reach out to us. We have a chat, they can email us, and we'll be happy to answer any questions they may have.
How wonderful. Thank you both, Ram and Smita. I'm really, I've always been a big supporter and of the work that you've been doing for the past 12 to 13 years. I've known you from back when you were incubated at IFMR. And I've always thought that, such organizations just have to have the hands and legs to keep powering themselves from every year to the next. So I think you're both exceptional people, and I hope our young listeners will take away wonderful nuggets of learning in their own journeys of, learning both about microcredits and just meeting very interesting people in society. Thank you both, Ram and Smita, once again.
Thank you,
Naveen.
Thank you, Naveen. Thank you so much for having us.
Wish you all the very best.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you all to all of you who came to our Facebook page, asked questions. I think it's very important that regardless of the period that we live in, to be able to meet interesting people and learn interesting things. And you should never think that there's only one way to learn, and that's part of the goal really at Beyond 8. We're not only trying to take out the inefficiencies of a typical school and college education and put together a hybrid model where learning is very modular, it's very nimble, it's very expert driven, and it's very unique in a way that it addresses the things that you're interested in and you're passionate about. I think we're putting together some of these things, and I'm sure more organizations are already doing it and will continue to do this. So if you're a young learner out there wondering who is there to help me, remember there's a whole lot of help available today. The silver lining in this whole pandemic is that learning has become very individualistic, and it's you learn the things that you want to learn and directly from your home. I understand that a lot of you are stuck at home and unable to meet your friends and have all the social interactions, and I think that's really what schools and colleges are finally useful for. To be able to get together and have fun. Learning itself of any subject can be done online like this in small nuggets. Thank you all for your participation, for your questions. I want to tell you that there's an upcoming event on Friday. As usual, we go back to our regular schedule when Akanksha Thakur, my dear friend, is going to talk about developing one's own ikigai. I think it's something you should mark your calendars for and join. It's on Friday next week at 11 a.m. as usual on our Facebook page. Thank you all for being with us here today. And I once again thank Ram and Smita for the wonderful work that they do. And I hope all of you will try and be part of that campaign that they are putting together. Have a wonderful weekend.